Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Mornings. I trust you're all doing very well. So today we'll be discussing a very critical topic that I call why you need to have God in your corner, or why you need to have God in your circle. To do justice to this topic, I will tell you a real life story, and I will also share the stories of three Bible characters with you, basically to tell you how they were able to have God in their corners, how they were able to maintain a relationship with God, and the benefits they had for having God in their corners. So, if you are the kind of person who really want to matter to those who matter in life, you want to matter to kings, you want to matter to presidents, you want to matter to your bosses, to the who is who, to those who really matter, not just mean men, this video is for you. And ultimately, if you want to matter to God, such that when you sigh, God knows what you're saying. When you ease, God knows what you're saying. When you wake up in the morning and stretch and yawn, God knows what you're saying. This video is for you. Like I earlier said, I will be sharing a real life story with you, and from there I will delve into the three Bible characters, just to make some form of comparisons, between this real life story and the three Bible characters and how they were able to maintain a relationship with God. So while I was back in my own country, I did work in different places. So there was one office in particular where I worked, and in this office, of course, we do have hierarchies in many of the organizations back in Nigeria. So in this particular organization, we have the managing partner, and after the managing partner, we have different partners, and then we have heads of departments, and then we have, of course, your seniors in your departments and the juniors. Everybody knows who is who in the law firm. So there was this young lady who just came in newly to the firm, very fresh, young lady, smart, witty, I would say, yes, just joined the firm and my department to be precise. So in my department, the partner in charge is a no-nonsense partner, a no-nonsense boss who doesn't take nonsense. He doesn't take nonsense from anybody. And is this kind of person who throws questions at you when everybody goes into his office, maybe to discuss or brainstorm on a particular transaction. He throws questions at you, irrespective of whether you are a senior person or a junior person. He throws questions at everybody. And if you are fortunate not to have the right answer to his questions, you'll definitely have a rough day. So when this young lady joined the department, everybody felt she would experience the boss same way every other person ahead of her experienced him. Surprisingly, she did not experience the boss the same way we all did. This lady was loved not just by the partner in charge of my department, she was loved by the managing partner. She was loved by many other partners. Well, this is based on my observation. I don't know, some other persons might not have seen it that way, but this is the way I saw it. She was loved basically by all the bosses. And there's a thing in that firm, if the managing partner likes you and maybe a couple of partners like you, there's a high probability that all the partners will like you, because information travel fast. If this person says, oh, I like that girl, she's good, I like that girl, she's smart, every other person would definitely assume you're smart, even though they haven't worked with you. So basically everybody's going to like you. But in this particular case, the young girl that I'm talking about is actually very smart. She's beautiful, she's well put together and what have you. So most people liked her. Basically, the bosses liked her. So she mattered to those who matter. So in this situation where she was appreciated and liked by the managing partner, most of the partners, the head of departments, and those who really matter in the firm, it didn't really matter whether some other people didn't like her. When I say other people, I mean maybe her peers or people younger than her in the firm, or maybe those who are slightly ahead of her in the firm. Those people didn't really matter. What mattered was that she was loved by the managing partner, she was loved by other partners, she was loved by the HOD, and she could basically get away with anything. So for instance, for the partner in charge of the department, the way he dealt with most of us back then was that whenever there was a transaction, he would call us into his office, we would brainstorm, okay, how do we handle this transaction? What do we feel about it? What are the laws we need to apply? How do we prepare the memo? What agreements do we need to draft? So while we brainstorm, the partner in charge would throw questions at us, like he just call you coldly. We call it cold calling in Harvard. He will just call your name and say, hey, what do you think about this? So if you're unfortunate not to know the answer to that question, you will definitely have a wrong day. So when this young lady joined the department, we all felt, okay, she's going to go through the same thing. Not like we waited for her to go through it, but we expected that, okay, the boss would definitely ask her questions, just the same way he would always ask us questions during brainstorming sessions. Fortunately for this young lady, she didn't go through that. Although, I mean, this was while I was there. I don't know if this happened after I left the firm. I'm not sure. But while I was there, she was never really questioned. She was never really bothered by the partner in charge of my department. Sometimes, you know, when she comes into the office and she says she's not feeling well, the HOD and other persons around will quickly say, oh, do you want to go back home? Unlike those of us who had gone ahead of her. Even if you say you have a terrible migraine, they will tell you, you need to do your work. There's no need for you to go home. You have to finish the work. So you can understand what I'm trying to say. She mattered to those who matter, and she enjoyed the benefits. Don't get me wrong, the young lady in question is smart. She's beautiful. She's witty. She's someone you can call a prototype staff. Like, yeah, a prototype staff, sort of. So she had everything, and then she mattered to those who matter. So everything was cool for her. She had everything going well for her. She was loved by all. So now let me relate the story to the 3 Bible characters that I want to talk about. And these 3 Bible characters are Mordecai, Joseph, and Daniel. And the reason why I have chosen these 3 Bible characters is because they all have some things in common, and one of which is that they enjoyed God's divine presence. They enjoyed God's divine presence. And apart from enjoying God's divine presence, they all had the attention of the kings that ruled around the time they were alive. So that I don't jump into this topic, let me start with the story of Daniel. So for those of us who are not familiar with Daniel, you can read about Daniel in the book of Daniel in the Bible. Yeah, that is in the Old Testament, so you can read about Daniel. So let me just paraphrase. So Daniel was one of the persons that was brought into Babylon after Nebuchadnezzar defeated Judah. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken. So at that time, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were brought into Babylon. And when they were brought into Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar said he needed some strong guys that he would work with. So among the guys that were chosen was Daniel. So when Daniel was chosen, the king liked him. Nebuchadnezzar liked him. And Nebuchadnezzar just did not suddenly like him. He liked him because of the qualities that Daniel possessed. Daniel possessed a lot of good qualities. Daniel is described in the Bible as someone who has an unusual aptitude to understand literature, every aspect of literature, and wisdom, meaning that Daniel was very intelligent, was very brilliant. Apart from that, Daniel had an unusual ability to interpret visions and dreams. And apart from that, Daniel was just generally loved for his ability to organize things. He was a great administrator. So what actually made him popular before the king is this. The king had a dream, and the king totally forgot his dream. He could not interpret his own dream. He could not even remember the dream, not to talk of interpreting the dream. So the king gathered all these magicians, all the sorcerers, everybody who had some form of power or the other in Babylon. He gathered every one of them and said, okay, I need you to interpret my dreams to me. You know, I can't even remember the dream, but tell me the dream and also interpret the dream to me. Nobody could do that. Nobody. So what happened? Daniel gathered his friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and said, okay, we need to go and pray. We need to pray to God so that God can tell us the dream that the king had, and then we can also interpret the same dream to the king. So Daniel went to the place of prayer with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, asked God to reveal the dream to him and also to interpret the dream, which God did. And Daniel was quick to go to Nebuchadnezzar to tell him what the dream was and the right interpretation of the dream. Of course, when Nebuchadnezzar heard this, he was very excited and he blessed the name of the God of Daniel. He blessed the name of the God of Daniel, and he also promoted Daniel. So after the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, another king came, to the throne. This king is called Darius of Medes, if I'm not mistaken. So when Darius became the king, Darius also liked Daniel. And because Daniel was just a good guy, he was a good administrator, people liked him, Daniel's peers began to hate on him. They began to envy him, like, what is this guy feeling like? He's feeling like the one who brought us all here. He's been a good administrator. The king likes him, yada, 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 yada. So you know what they did? They planned for Daniel. They know that Daniel is a Christian. They know that he prays to God. They know that he fears God. They know that he loves God. So they went to the king and told the king, King, we want you to make a decree such that nobody prays to any other god but you for the next 30 days. So they actually did this because they know that Daniel loves God and that Daniel will never pray to any other person other than God Almighty. The king, who actually did not know what was going on, agreed. So this decree was made. And the penalty for praying to any other god apart from the king was that person would be thrown into the den of lions. Well, fortunately, Daniel heard about the decree and he went into his house and he prayed such that people heard him pray. And of course, the accusers, the traducers, the naysayers, the wicked ones, they went to the king and said, "Oh king, you made a decree that nobody should pray to any other person other than you for the next 30 days. Wow, your beloved friend Daniel has been seen praying to someone totally different from you that he calls God." So the king couldn't do anything and he was so upset, he was so worried. The night he was told that Daniel prayed to someone else other than himself, he paced up and down. He really wished it did not happen because he really liked Daniel. But unfortunately, being the king who had made a decree, could not go back on his word. So Daniel had to be thrown into the den of lions. So what happened to Daniel? When Daniel got into the den of lions, all the lions welcomed him. They were like, "Oh, brother, welcome. We love you. We've been waiting for you. How are you doing? Even though you look different, you're a human being. We like you. We love you. We are going to make you feel welcome in this den." So that was what happened. So what do I want to bring out of this story? So Daniel enjoyed all of these goodies. He enjoyed benefit from kings. Kings loved him. Nebuchadnezzar loved him. Darius loved him. He got promotion upon promotions. And then apart from that, his own personal qualities, he was a great administrator. He was intelligent. And he was just loved. He enjoyed love here and there from those who matter, from kings, from administrators, from the chief of staff, from the attendant of the chief of staff. Because when he even got to Babylon, the king was like, "Give these people food so that they can be strong and healthy, they can have 6 packs and what have you." But Daniel was like, "No, I don't want any of those things. I only want vegetables and water." So you can imagine, he was a fit guy. So how did Daniel get to enjoy all of these benefits? How did he get to enjoy all the benefits of being loved by kings? Not just one king, but kings. 1, Daniel loved God. 2, Daniel feared God. 3, Daniel did only what God wanted him to do. So having God in your circle is not just a coincidence. You need to do some things to have God in your circle. And like earlier mentioned, you need to have the fear of God. You need to love God, and you must be willing to do what God wants you to do to have him in your circle. And for you to maintain having God in your relationship, you need to do all of these things. Just look at the life of Daniel. Look at the life of Daniel. When he interpreted the dream to Nebuchadnezzar, he was quick to give God thanks after God revealed the dream and the interpretation of the dream to him. When Nebuchadnezzar said, "I need you to interpret this dream," what he did was he went to God. He didn't go to a human being. He didn't go to a sorcerer. He went to God straight away to say, "God, show me this dream and interpret this dream to me." So he was always in constant communication with God. And whenever God revealed anything to him, he would go back to God to say, "Thank you." Whenever there was temptation, whenever there was anything that would take him out of the presence of God, he would go back to God. When the king said nobody should pray to any other person apart from him, Daniel went to his room and he prayed to God. So that is that about Daniel. Let me move on to the next person, who is actually one of my very favorite characters in the Bible. His name, Joseph. So Joseph was also one of the persons in the days of old who had the heart of God. Joseph was loved by those who matter. Let me start with Joseph as a child. So because of all the things that God showed Joseph as a child, His brothers hated him and they sold him into slavery. Some way, somehow, Joseph found himself in Potiphar's house. In Potiphar's house as a slave, Joseph was loved by Potiphar. Eventually, when Potiphar's wife framed Joseph and Joseph found himself in prison, the prison guards loved Joseph. Those who matter in the prison, they liked Joseph and they made Joseph the head of the prisoners, such that Joseph was the one giving orders to other prisoners. In prison, Joseph, the dreamer, began to interpret dreams to people to the point that he interpreted the dreams of the cupbearer and the chief baker, if I'm not mistaken. And this dream interpretation landed him into the king's palace, because when the king had a dream, he needed somebody to interpret the dream to him, and Joseph was the one that was called to interpret the king's dream. And guess what? Eventually, Joseph was loved by Pharaoh and he became the prime minister in that country. So what are we saying? Joseph, all through his life, mattered to those who matter. He mattered to all the bosses. He mattered to his father. He mattered to Potiphar. He mattered to the head of the prisoners. He mattered to the king, Pharaoh to be precise. What are we talking about? So how did Joseph get there? How was he able to matter to those who matter? Joseph was able to matter to those who matter first because he had the fear of God. Joseph had always had the fear of God in his heart. When Joseph was in Potiphar's house and Potiphar's wife wanted to give him, the stuff, Joseph was quick to say no. How many of us will be able to say no in this generation if you get that kind of free offer? Answer the question. I'm answering the question in my own heart as well. How many of us? But Joseph said, lie, I will not do this thing. I will not defile myself with you. You are my boss's wife. I will not do it and I will not sin against God. Yeah. And then while Joseph was in prison, he wasn't even mad at his brothers. He didn't hate anybody. Rather, while Joseph was in prison, Joseph continued to interpret dreams, which the Bible says he considered doing the work of God. So he kept on doing God's work while in prison. He didn't shy away from that gift. He continued to use his talent for positive things. So one other thing that I also want to bring out of Joseph's story is that he was always quick to acknowledge that God was the one who gave him the gift of dream interpretation. Because when he was to interpret Pharaoh's dream, what he said was that God will show unto the king what that dream meant. So he first of all acknowledged God as the one who would interpret the dream before he then says or interprets the dream the king had. So in Joseph's case, I would say he was able to have God in his corner. He was able to maintain a solid relationship with God in his corner. One, because he had the fear of God. Two, because he was always quick to acknowledge that God was God and God was the source of his skills and talent. And thirdly, he just was an obedient child of God. He was an obedient child of God. So let me move to the third person, Mordecai. While I do not really have all the details about Mordecai, I just want to jump straight into how Mordecai mattered to King Xerxes. Or Xerxes, I don't know if it's Xerxes or Xerxes, but the king at that time. So Mordecai was just this random guy who was always at the palace gates. He wasn't really popular. He was just Queen Esther's cousin, and there was nothing more to him. So there was this guy called Haman. Haman never liked Mordecai because Mordecai never gave him his due regard. Like, he always expects Mordecai to bow to him anytime he sees him at the palace gate, to say, Oga, Egbon Chief, welcome, sir. But Mordecai never did anything like that. So Haman just hated him for that. So to punish Haman, Haman plotted to kill Mordecai. And to kill Mordecai, he built a gallows. He built a gallows in accordance with the description that his wife and some of his friends gave him. They told him to go build a gallows. You will kill that guy. Just kill him because you don't like him. Kill him. We don't need to be seeing his face around the king's palace. But what really happened that made the king to remember Mordecai was that there was a day that the king was pacing up and down in the palace. He was like, oh, there's somebody I need to upgrade. There's somebody I need to give gifts to that I'm get to, bless in this palace. And he remembered that there was somebody who revealed a plot by some persons to kill him. Or some people plotted to kill the king, and Mordecai revealed this plot to the king. So the king remembered this and then said that Mordecai needed to be blessed. Mordecai needed to be appreciated, and Mordecai needed to be shown to the whole community as a great person, and he said he needed to bless Mordecai. And God used the king to upgrade Mordecai, to bless him and to show him to the world. The king honored Mordecai. And guess who the king instructed to go and beautify Mordecai? Haman, the hater. Yeah, Haman the hater. So guys, what am I trying to say here? Looking at these three Bible characters, Mordecai, Joseph, and Daniel, these three people had favor with all the kings they served. Kings loved them. Kings blessed them. Kings upgraded them. Not just mere men, not just mean men. Kings upgraded them. Kings wanted to work with them. Kings blessed them, and they served kings, those who matter. And like the story I earlier shared with you about the young lady in my previous office, she was loved by those who matter. Same thing with Daniel, same thing with Joseph, and same thing with Mordecai. They were all loved by the king, simply because they held God in their corners. They did what God wanted them to do. They feared the Lord, they loved the Lord, they sought the face of the Lord, and they were in constant fear of the Lord. So guys, to wrap this up, I would just say to you that if we all want to matter to the King of Kings, if we all want to matter to God, and we want to matter to the who is who here on planet Earth, what do we need to do? Look at the story of Daniel, look at the story of Joseph, and look at the story of Mordecai. Like I earlier said, they had the fear of the Lord, they were quick to seek the face of the Lord, they were quick to do what God wanted them to do, and they were obedient to the instructions and to the commandments of God. So you have it all there. Guys, that is all I have for you today on this episode of Monix. Till we see again, it's bye from me, Monix.